What if removal didn't exist? In this world, the fastest decks would win every time, and going first might as well be a declaration of the victor rather than the individual to start off a nice game. Without removal, there's a significant degree of dynamics and back and forth problem solving that's lost. And we all to some degree understand this truth, but maybe not the magnitude of importance that removal has in our decks. I've recently had the opportunity to play with tons of unique people and have noticed something about the games I've experienced. People want removal but don't want to be the ones to run it. I've seen people's decks be as snowbally mid-range as a commander deck can get, and they still lose because they can't deal with what their opponents are doing. So they ask all game, does someone have removal for that? When it only affects their board, so why would anyone else want to get rid of it? There are going to be games where someone may place down a piece that shuts down your entire deck, and these things need to be dealt with if you're going to continue fighting for first place. But it's not always the case that this piece affects your opponents, and if it doesn't, then they'll actively want it to stick around since that card being on the field is like you having an abyssal persecutor on yours. I've also seen games where there's a stacks player trying to lock everyone out, and if there wasn't a well-timed counterspell and the combined effort of three opponents removing their pieces and trying to shut them down, they would have succeeded. Magic the Gathering is an arms race. Everyone is trying to reach the finish line first, but sometimes the answer isn't speeding up, but slowing everyone else down. You may not be the fastest deck at the table, but with removal, you don't have to be. As a $25 budget player, this has been what's allowed me to keep up with every other deck at the table. Since my cards are inherently capped on power level, gatekeeping me from the strongest things in the format, I need to make sure that I don't also lose to those exact cards that I can't run. And funnily enough, every card looks the same in the eyes of removal. Whether you're running a janky enchantment like Awakening Zone or something game warping like the Great Henge, they all get removed the same when Austere Command hits the stack, creating a balance where budget cards and budget list cards are equal. In my previous video all about removal engines and how they are significantly underrated and underutilized options, I got a lot of pushback from people talking about how it's not fun or clearly this has to be a bit. While I definitely acknowledge that I run a significantly higher removal count than most other people, being in the 20 to 30 range, I wasn't necessarily arguing that every deck should jump into the deep end like I have, and play the extreme numbers of removal that I do. I'm mostly trying to address the attitude that removal has stigmatized and show people the value in running removal. While 20 to 30 is high, I find irony hearing how it's unfun coming from people only playing 5. And my rebuttal to that is losing the game without having any way to interact is also pretty unfun. This game is meant to be dynamic. If there's no one trying to stop each other, it's no different than 4 players sitting down to play solitaire, leading us back to the example in the beginning of the video. While for some people it may not be fun to play or face high counts of removal, not all of it is faced at any one individual player, so there's always still counterplay. Removal is a necessary part of this game, and we can all acknowledge it, but I still see people who will have a nearly non-existent removal package and complain that their deck doesn't work. Look, I get it. If you're playing traditional single target removal, it's horribly inefficient in a multiplayer setting and gives your opponents an advantage to get ahead since they didn't have to spend mana and a card in hand to remove something from the board. That's also why I'm not suggesting cramming in more boring traditional single target removal. If you want to know more about what I suggest running, I highly suggest following the link to my removal engines video after this, so that way you can get a comprehensive guide on how to run more fun kinds of removal. I think regardless of the deck, removal is important. Even the fastest decks in CEDH run removal. As annoying as it may be to slot in, it's a necessity, just like lands. While vegetables might not taste super great, I don't think removal really is a vegetable if you play the right kinds. Board wipes allow you to deal with all the problematic permanents on the field this turn, which are significantly more efficient in a multiplayer format, since rather than just dealing with one thing, you deal with all of your opponent's things, and removal engines can help you deal with things turn after turn, but they may require more synergy or increased investment to pull off and get operational. My main argument is that regardless of what removal type you decide to play, excluding very niche decks, most decks could use more than just 8. You never hear stories about the one-sided blowouts that Commander games constantly provide. The real stories are the ones that have back and forth, dynamic gameplay that inspires creative play patterns. I think realistically we all want to have these kinds of games because they're the most memorable and the most fun for everyone involved. And there's nothing wrong with playing the game how you want to play it. And if that means running less removal, I have no place to tell you that you need to be running more. All I ask is that we consider the consequences of our decisions in the ratios that we choose to build our decks with. Whether it be lands, removal, draw, ramp, or synergy, just be mindful of what goes into your decks, because we play this game to have fun. And I believe that doesn't start at the table, but rather as soon as you build your deck. If you're intrigued with what I have to say, but don't know how or where to start implementing, I highly suggest you watch my parent video that'll pop up on screen that talks all about removal and removal engines. It's only a few minutes, but delves deep into the concepts that I lightly covered in this video. I'm also starting my own Discord, so if you want to play games with me, consider joining. There's no paywall that it's locked behind, so anyone can join if you want. I'll have a link in the description of this video if anyone's interested. And finally, if there's anyone you know that you think might benefit from this video, consider sharing it with them so we can all become better deck builders together. This has been Togo's Rock, and I am out.